Hello, guys. Welcome to the Endless Possibilities podcast. My name is Gareth, and I'm delighted to be back again for another episode. This is a solo episode. Me just talking with you guys. So I want you to get comfortable, sit back, relax, maybe put a cup of tea on or a cup of coffee, and we're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about something that was pretty profound for me during my spiritual awakening. Actually, I would call it a paradigm shift in itself, and that was the phenomena that's known as astral travel. So in one of the most misunderstood, most powerful, and let's be honest, sometimes terrifying tools on the spiritual path, the whole concept of astral travel or out-of-body experiences, OBEs. I mean, people are like, is it an experience in your head? Yeah, is it a dream? Today I'm going to talk about like everything I can think of, all of my experiences. I've had a number of out-of-body experiences. I would say that it was the biggest catalyst to ignite my spiritual awakening. So I'm gonna talk to you today about my first OBE, where I was shot through the roof like a rocket. Yeah. So let's unpack this together. What actually is an OBE, out of body experiences? Can anybody do it? Does it help your spiritual evolution, or is it just spiritual tourism? And most importantly, should you have an out-of-body experience? Okay, so let's start with the first one. What is an out-of-body experience? It at its simplest, an out-of-body experience, or OBE, is a direct experience of your consciousness functioning outside of your physical body while you're still alive. And most of the time it happens when you're either meditating or lying down in a bed. So there's two different types of out-of-body experiences. So maybe more, maybe there's three, but I'm going to talk mainly about the two different types that I experienced. There's the classic astral projection. Okay, what does that mean? The classic astral projection. So that is you initiating somehow a vibrational state, and you then separating from your physical form in a duplicate body known as the astral body. And it feels kind of semi-physical. So I remember getting out of my body. It almost feels like you're just actually like been kind of like you're stuck in mud and you're trying to like pull or roll out of it, and then you kind of like separate and you're actually in a copy of your physical form that seems to be made up of like a translucent energy body. And it feels like you stand, like I would pop out, I would stand. I had stood at the bottom of my bed looking at my physical form in the bed. It feels physical. It feels like if you touch something, like your hand can go through it, but you can actually feel the texture of the solid wall as it goes through it. Some people actually say that they see a silver cord connected to the physical body. I didn't notice that. So you can move in this body. You can like, you don't walk. I'm just trying to think how I used to do it. It's been quite a while since I had an OBE, classic OBE, but I guess I would just like will myself to move, and I would move. You can fly. So you would just think to fly and you would then start to rise up. Or you could think of a place where you would want to go, and actually just be there in an instant. And that could be another location, another physical location. Or you could actually travel into like astral realms. So these are kind of like dreamy type worlds with other beings that live there. You can also pass through walls. My first OBE, I flew through the ceiling of my house and was flying. Yeah. So the second type of astral projection is known as pure conscious travel, phasing, or mental projection. And I also had them as well. These would be getting yourself into a meditative state, dropping your data input. So you would kind of like cut out noise, visual, stimuli coming in, and then shifting your awareness with your intent to somewhere else. A little bit hard. Well, they're both hard, difficult. So yeah. And what happens in that one is you travel as just a disembodied awareness. So you do not have, the astral body. You just go as an observer and you can kind of look around. So there's no body. One moment you're in your room meditating and the next you've just shifted into a completely different reality.
In 1859, the sun unleashed the most powerful solar storm ever recorded, the Carrington event. Right now, a huge sunspot group is easily visible through solar telescopes and rotating into view. How do they compare? Let's take a look. On September 1, 1859, Richard Carrington observed an enormous white light flare exploding out of a massive sunspot region. Hours later, Earth was hit by a geomagnetic superstorm that was so intense that telegraph systems sparked and caught fire. Auroras glowed as far south as the Caribbean, and the magnetic field of Earth violently surged. People in New York City said they could read their newspapers by the light of the aurora. Miners in Colorado got up at 1 a.m. because the aurora was so bright they thought it was dawn. The sunspot responsible, known as Active Region 112 or AR112, was one of the largest ever observed. Now let's look at the sunspot group rotating into view this week. Early data suggests this region is large, magnetically active, and complex. It's large enough to be easily seen through solar filters and big enough for Earth to fit inside over 10 times. It's not yet as large as the Carrington region, but it's in the same ballpark of historically significant active regions if it continues to grow. But size alone doesn't predict whether an active region will produce a Carrington-level storm. You need a highly twisted magnetic configuration, a major X-class flare, and a fast Earth-directed coronal mass ejection, or CME. The Carrington event had all three. Could it happen again? Absolutely. The Sun is capable of events even larger than Carrington. It's not a question of if, but when. It's inevitable that eventually we'll be hit by an event like this in the future. In fact, CMEs caused the 1989 Quebec blackout, caused the 2003 Halloween storms that shut down satellites and airline communications, and in 2012 produced a Carrington-level CME that missed the Earth by just 1 week in our revolution around the Sun. If a Carrington-class storm happened today, we would see the flash of light from the flare 8 minutes after it leaves the Sun, because photons travel at the speed of light. That flash isn't dangerous to people on the ground, but it can immediately disturb radio communications, GPS accuracy, and satellite electronics. The true danger comes from what follows, the coronal mass ejection, or CME. That's not light, it's a massive cloud of charged particles and magnetic fields, traveling much slower, typically taking 1 to 3 days to reach Earth. A Carrington-class CME arriving today would induce huge electrical currents on our power grid. Transformers would likely overheat and fail, causing regional or even possibly continent-wide blackouts that could last months depending upon infrastructure resilience. In a modern world depending upon GPS, communication satellites, aviation, and electrical grids, A true Carrington level impact could be disruptive on a scale humanity has never yet experienced. Not quite civilization ending, but it would certainly be a global emergency. Should we be worried about this sunspot group? No, but we should pay attention. The region is large, complex, and active. That means more flares, more CMEs, and more opportunities for spectacular auroras, and possibly radio blackouts or satellite disruptions if an eruption heads our way. So while this isn't yet a Carrington 2.0, it's a great reminder that our star is powerful, dynamic, and still capable of surprises. I'll be tracking this region over the next several days with high-resolution solar imaging, so stay tuned for updates. Clear skies.
Earlier today, I recorded a little something right after the morning show. Kids were still sleeping. It was dark outside. I posted it on X. There was a considerable amount of people who just really did not get what was going on at all. And it was completely their fault for being lazy. But as always, I'm going to go ahead and remedy that. So first, here's the video that we posted this morning.
All right, I have to be a little quiet because my children are still asleep, but I also had to... I don't know what the hell this is, but do you understand what's happening when we get a story like the top story in the morning news today about them spotting the galactic magnetic reversal and it's local? Do you understand what it's like? What was that, like a week or two ago? Geodesy breaking down? This isn't like, oh, like we're changing atmospheric chemistry. We're talking about the solid Earth changing known patterns that have stood the test of geologic time. What? We're so close. We're like one more big auroral event away from a whole heck of a lot of people being like, okay, wait a minute. I've been on this planet a while. Not used to seeing this. We're so close. And the scientists are already there. It was about 2 or 3 years ago. I sent you guys the video message from a whole bunch of my friends who need to remain in the shadows because they're the ones with access to information. It's where we get so much of the hints about where to look for stuff. And it's good to be the nexus, but if the network breaks, there is no nexus. You guys might remember I told you that they were saying that they are all getting ready to start dripping this information because they figured out as long as you don't just give away the whole bag in one paper, if you don't try to just tear it all down with one swing, you can let the drops accumulate, and they're accumulating very quickly, and there's about to be a complete shift of... I don't know if the Overton window is the right way to put it, because I think that that's more in terms of like what's politically okay to talk about, but whatever the version of the Overton window is in terms of science and culture and mainstream discussions, even people talking to each other. I don't know if you guys saw the post, but pretty much every AI, when prompted neutrally, will suggest that whatever the Overton window of the rest of worldly discourse is, it is moving in this direction, and there's about to be a cliff that it's going to fall off of. Be ready for that.
So, the criticisms were coming from people who follow, not them, but they were reposting, retweeting, sharing, etc. And then people who had never seen this stuff before, didn't know what I was talking about, maybe didn't even know who I was, were listening to that couple of minutes there and being like, you didn't say anything. And of course, if you are an observer, if you watch this channel, you know I kind of said quite a bit, didn't I? It's not unlike the story about the Airbus A320s and the solar radiation, which is something I said to start watching for. Although I have to admit, I guessed, and many of you will probably remember this, my guess was that at the start they would come up with some non-sun related excuse. I didn't think they were just going to come right out and tell us the truth right off the bat. And that it was going to be the exact thing we thought it was going to be. It was going to be the particles flipping bits in the computers, those bit flips. And of course, the particles are cosmic rays. You could just Google cosmic rays bit flip. You can learn everything in the world you'd ever want to know, and much more than you ever wanted to know, in about an hour or two. And it doesn't matter if it's these changes in the solid Earth. It doesn't matter if it's these auroras going nuts. It doesn't matter if the news stories and the issues with the airlines and the weather and the other things, the major network glitches and the power systems, like what happened earlier this year in Spain and Portugal and France with the power systems going down simply because there was a pulse of solar energy that came in through a weak spot in Earth's magnetic field. We're so close. With these enormous sunspots on the sun right now, we might just be a couple of days away from the next major auroral event. Hopefully it's not too bad, but think about that. If this sunspot that is on there right now, it's still got about 4 or 5 days to flare and send something our way. If it does that, there is no doubt that we're going to get some significant auroras. If people see auroras again, there's going to start to be that, wait a minute, whoa. This has never happened before. What's going on? And it is at that point when the friends who didn't listen to you before are going to start to remember, hey, wait a minute, he was talking about this. You're going to be in a perfect position, not only to be really helpful to the people you care about, but if I'm being perfectly honest, you're in a perfect position to tell them, okay, I'm so glad you're here now. This is the guy you listen to. And then you and I'll talk about it. I have no interest in major marketing campaigns or anything like that. I would love it if more people woke up organically the right way. You're about to be in a position to do that as soon as the sun says so. See you in the morning for the Daily Show.